There comes a moment in every woman's life when the noise becomes too much. When the constant giving, the endless explanations, the perpetual availability to everyone else's needs finally weighs heavier than the silence she's been afraid to embrace. Hi, it's Vernon again. In today's video, I want to show you exactly what happens when you focus on yourself and stay silent, especially as a woman over 70. When you stop chasing, stop explaining, and simply turn inward, something powerful begins to unfold. This isn't just about peace and quiet. It's about what comes back to your life when you choose silence, strength, clarity, and emotional healing. If you've ever felt invisible or tired of giving without receiving, this message is for you. Stay with me, because we're going to explore 4 life-changing truths that return to you only when you start focusing on your inner world. But before we start, take a moment to reflect. What have you been giving to everyone else that you haven't given to yourself in years? Leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what's been on your heart. And if this message speaks to you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps more women like you find this space of calm and wisdom. So now, close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the noise of life slowly fading into a gentle silence. In that quiet, something begins to surface, a deeper knowing. Let's step into the first truth, a realization that might gently unravel the tension you've carried for years and offer something rare: freedom. Number 1. When you choose silence, the right people begin to hear you. There's a quote I love from the Stoic philosopher Epictetus: "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." For years I liked how that sounded, but I didn't truly understand it until I watched my younger sister, Eleanor, live it. Eleanor, my sister, she's always been the glue in our family. She never missed a birthday, she checked in on everyone, and she always made time. Her voice was soft, steady, and generous. But over time, I noticed something. Fewer people seemed to really hear her. Her kindness had turned into background noise. Then, something changed. Right after she turned 72, Eleanor chose to do less. Not out of resentment, but out of self-respect. She stopped calling first. She turned off her phone in the afternoons. She started spending quiet mornings with her notebook and peaceful evenings in her garden. And, without ever saying so, she let silence speak for her. What happened next surprised even me. People noticed. Her children began checking in, not for help, but for her company. Her friends started reaching out, not out of habit, but with real intention. Her quiet presence started to feel magnetic, not loud, not flashy, just solid and real. Eleanor told me once, "I didn't stop caring. I just stopped explaining." That stuck with me. Because silence, when chosen with care, doesn't isolate you. It clarifies everything. It shows you who listens without being asked. It gives you room to hear your own thoughts again. If you only spoke when something true needed to be said, not to please, not to fix, how might your life begin to sound? So, when you choose silence, something gentle but powerful takes place. The people who matter begin to draw closer, and those who never truly saw you fade into the quiet where they belong. That kind of clarity feels like a breath of fresh air, but it also reveals something deeper. Because once the voices around you fade, you're left with another question, a more personal one. Beyond people, what else has slowly slipped away while you were busy holding everything together? How often have you ignored your own exhaustion simply because there was no time to rest? How many moments of peace have been postponed for later, and later never came? Silence doesn't just change how others relate to you. It changes what you begin to notice about yourself. And that brings us to the next truth, one that's not about relationships at all. It's about energy, and how silence can lead you back to the parts of yourself you didn't even realize were missing. That leads us to the next truth. It's not about people, it's about energy, and how silence, surprisingly, helps you gather back the pieces of yourself that have been slowly, silently slipping away. Number 2, silence is how you begin to call your true self awake. Some kinds of tiredness don't show in your posture or your voice, but they sit quietly at the center of your being. It's the kind that builds up not after one long day, but over years of saying yes when you really wanted to say no. Not out of weakness, but because life asked, and you answered again and again. That slow drifting away from what you need, from what fills you, is how many women lose touch with themselves without even realizing it. But silence offers a return, a quiet invitation to come home, not to a place, but to yourself. The French philosopher Blaise Pascal once wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." But what if sitting in stillness isn't a problem at all? What if it's a path back to clarity, a way of gently gathering the pieces of yourself you forgot you were allowed to keep? Energy doesn't just drain through activity. It slips away in the form of people-pleasing, through self-neglect disguised as duty. If what I'm sharing here speaks to something deep inside you, maybe now's a good time to like this video. Not as a favor, but as a way to help this message reach other women who might need a moment of stillness too. Not as a favor, but as a way to help this message reach other women who might need a moment of stillness too. Through constantly being on while your inner self whispers for pause. But when you welcome silence, not as emptiness, but as space, you start to hear that voice again. The voice that doesn't rush. The one that doesn't apologize for needing rest. The part of you that still remembers how to simply be. And slowly, without making an announcement, you begin to return to yourself. In small ways. You take your time in the morning. You read slowly. You sit without a plan. You become aware of how often you felt hurried, even in your own home. And something opens. You realize restoration isn't a luxury. It's your birthright. The world may still ask for your attention, but now you get to decide when and how to give it. That is the quiet power of silence. Not withdrawal, but return. Not escape, but remembrance. And from that place, you begin to live more fully, not because you've added more, but because you've finally come back to what matters. Now let's explore one more truth, one that often surprises women the most. How silence can transform not just your energy, but your sense of purpose. Truth number 3. In silence, you begin to see what truly matters. Silence doesn't just bring peace, it reveals priorities. When the outer world grows quiet, the inner one begins to speak. And in that stillness, you may find yourself asking, what have I been living for? And is it still true? So many of us, for decades, have lived by roles: mother, wife, caregiver, community builder. These roles give structure, even identity. But what happens when they no longer demand your attention every day? What rises in their place isn't always obvious. Sometimes it feels like emptiness. But look again, and you'll see it's actually space. Space to reflect, space to choose, space to redefine what a meaningful life looks like now. My oldest friend, Haroldine, once told me something that stuck with me. She said, "I realized I'd spent most of my life living in response to others. It wasn't until the house was quiet that I began living from myself." That shift from living in reaction to living in intention is where true purpose begins to emerge. Not the purpose tied to achievements or outcomes, but the kind that feels like alignment. The kind where even ordinary things, watering a plant, writing a letter, taking a quiet walk, feel whole. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And isn't that the paradox of aging? We carry the clearest vision only after the moments have passed. Only when the noise settles and the echoes of past choices begin to sound more like teachers than regrets. In the silence of our later years, we don't just look back, we begin to see patterns, lessons, and longings that were once buried beneath urgency. But even more, we are offered something sacred, the chance to re-enter life not as we were, but as we are now, wiser, lighter, and finally in tune with what truly matters. This is not the end of the story, but the first time we're free to write it in our own handwriting. Before we move on, I'd love to ask you something gently. Is there a small truth you now recognize? Something you missed when life was noisier? Share it in the comments if you feel called. You never know who might be quietly encouraged by your words. Number 4. Silence changes the way the world responds to you. Something powerful begins to shift, not in you, but around you, when your silence is no longer rooted in fear, but in self-possession. You are no longer quiet because you're unsure. You are quiet because you've made peace with what no longer needs to be spoken. When a woman steps into this kind of silence, the world notices, even if it can't name what's different. People pause before interrupting. Demands soften, conversations deepen, energy shifts, and a space begins to form, not just within her, but around her. It's not about mystery or intimidation, it's about presence. A presence that says, I no longer explain who I am to be understood. That presence doesn't need permission. It speaks without speaking. It draws respect without asking for it. The woman who no longer chases validation changes the climate of every room she enters. And here's the quiet paradox. When you stop trying to manage others, they often start managing themselves differently around you. It's not control, it's clarity. When you are rooted within, the chaos outside begins to feel less personal. You don't absorb every emotion. You don't react to every tone. You remain, instead, in your center. The Stoic philosophers taught that the most powerful person in any space is the one least disturbed by its energy. Silence teaches you that. It teaches you where to place your attention. It reminds you that being calm is not weakness, it is discipline. You begin to influence not by effort, but by integrity, not through force, but by the quiet weight of being deeply grounded in yourself. And that's when the world starts to move differently. Not because you demanded anything, but because you stopped giving away your peace so freely. This isn't about shrinking. It's about standing with such clarity that the world can't help but shift around your stillness. Take a quiet moment for yourself. Ask gently, where could silence guide you better than reacting ever could? If something in this speaks to you, share a thought in the comments. It might be the reminder someone else needs. Now, let's bring everything together and reflect on the simple promise that ties these truths into one: wholeness. Conclusion. Silence brings you back to wholeness. What have we truly uncovered in these moments together? Silence, once misunderstood as weakness or absence, has revealed itself as something far more powerful. It is not retreat, it is return. It is the quiet doorway back to self-respect, to clarity, to purpose, and to inner authority. Each truth we've explored isn't separate, they form a cycle, a soft but unwavering call back to who you really are beneath all the noise. When you stop chasing, the right people find you. When you stop explaining, your energy returns. When you stop performing, your purpose emerges. And when you stop reacting, the world begins to respond differently to your stillness. This is the essence of wholeness, not needing to prove, to rush, to convince, but simply being enough, as you are, in your quiet strength. So as you walk back into your day, hold this space close. Let silence walk with you, not to escape life, but to deepen the way you live it. And if this video has offered you even one meaningful moment, I invite you to share it with someone you care about. Like, comment, and subscribe, not just to support this channel, but to keep this kind of wisdom flowing to those who may need it most. Until next time, honor your stillness and let it guide you home. And I'm Vernon. Thanks for watching my video.